Okay. Let me just share my screen. Give me 1 second. So can you guys see this? You guys can see my PowerPoint, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my lesson today is about the impact of the Emancipation Proclamation. And just so you guys know, I'm going to be giving you guys a quick recap of what we would have learned in a more direct instruction. I'm going to focus this on the later half of my lesson, the more discussion aspect of it. So just a quick recap as to what we want to remember about the Emancipation Proclamation. It was issued by Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. Now, if you guys remember, Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States, and 1863 was at the height of the Civil War. It stated that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are henceforth and shall be free. Now, I think you guys, based on any background information you have and based on what that literally says, can understand what this is trying to say. It's basically saying slavery is no longer allowed. It's not we're fighting against slavery. It's not allowed anymore. It changed the Civil War from a war to preserve the Union towards a war for freedom. Now, that one may be a bit confusing, and I'll try to lay this one out. Essentially, before that, the conflict was, if you guys remember, what you would have remembered if I gave the direct instruction, the Civil War, the North was fighting the South because the South seceded because of an ongoing conflict and different views. So the fight was essentially to keep the country together. But now the North was stating that this is no longer what we're doing. We are actively fighting against slavery. So now every charge into battle from the North was a charge for freedom. They were actively saying, this is what we're fighting for. This is what we want. This is what we want the outcome from this war to be. And finally, it also signaled the acceptance of black men into the Union Army and paved the way for over 200,000 black soldiers to fight for the Union. Um, Basically, when the war when this document shifted the war to a war for freedom, now um, the black men living that were now free were saying, "Oh my gosh, I read it online. The liberated were now becoming the liberators. They were now actively being the ones fighting for their own freedom. It inspired them to join and fight for themselves, fight for their people in order to um, earn their own freedom." So those are just some quick facts. You guys don't need to remember that by heart, but those are just some things to remember from my lesson. And now I'm going to give you guys about a minute, and I want you to gather your thoughts on the following questions, and then we're going to have a discussion. So if you're in ELA concentration, I want you to think long term, like why this is important, what impact did it have on the future, even your future. Think about what role it could have played. For math concentration, I want you guys to think more short term. Think about like how did it affect the Civil War? Like what could have been different as a result of this. And for social studies concentrations, because you guys probably learned about this a little more in your classes, I want you guys to think a little bit deeper about why you think either it had like a direct impact, essentially saying like this is what it did this and this happened, or if it had more of a symbolic effect and was just like a symbol for change. So I want you guys to I'll give you guys about 45 seconds, a minute to think, and then we're going to come back and have a discussion. Give you guys about 10 more seconds. Yeah, Luigi, I'll pull up the questions again. So, oh, since Luigi, your ELA, I want you to think long term. Like how did this impact the United States long term? Like, what even in your life is different as a result of this? So I'll give you guys another 30 seconds. Okay, so ELA folk, what do you guys think this document could have played on the long-term future of the U.S.? Does anyone wanna volunteer to answer that one? I'll have to call on someone if no one volunteers.
I don't know if this is what you're looking for because this feels like the obvious answer, but it made it so nobody owns slaves anymore.
Well, that's literally almost exactly what I was looking for. Like it wasn't that deep of a question. Like it just literally was that it made slavery illegal. Like it's not it really like when you think about what slavery was, the fact that this was what made the played a role in making it not allowed anymore. Like that's a very huge change. Like it seems very simple, and I understand like oh like that might seem obvious, but that's literally exactly what happened. So like obviously that's going to be very important. Does anybody else have anything to add? That was sort of what I was looking for, but if anyone else has something else they want to contribute, then I'm all ears. Okay, that's fine. Do the math concentrations have any thoughts about how it could have, how it literally played a direct role in the short term effects of the Civil War?
Well, I think it played a role in a lot of parts. I think one thing interesting to think about is that there was like a less technology in that day. So like even though it's short term, like not everybody found out that like the slaves were like that the having slaves is no longer allowed like the same day. So like I feel like that going across the country like would bring heightened emotions along with it because like not everybody's used to it and this is something really new. I'm not exactly sure like the emotions that went into that because I'm not that profound on history, but I feel like the announcement of that document definitely like raised both sides' opinion drastically because now that it actually happened for the side defending it, they're like, oh yes, this is what we wanted. But the side that wasn't defending it was like, oh, this just happened, so now we have to get ready and go to war. Like this is not what we want, you know?
Yeah, like oh, like it just got real. Like this is what they want, And yeah, like Jack said, during that time, information took a long time to travel, and this was a pretty heavy piece of information for the time. This is a pretty divisive. It said you're either on this side or you're either for it or against it, and that plays a huge role in people's emotions. Like what I said before. The charges into battle for freedom now. It wasn't just oh I'm fighting against these people. A lot of people now had something that they wanted to fight for. Is that my 1 minute? Okay. So social studies concentrations. What do you guys think about either more of a direct impact or more of a short term or more of a long term symbolic impact? What do you guys feel about that? That those that opinion.
For like a symbolic impact, I think it helped pave the way for the 13th Amendment. So, like, in real time, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't do a lot to free actual slaves because it was freeing slaves in a part of the country the Union didn't control and
Mm-hmm.
leaving slavery in place in places like Kentucky and Maryland because they didn't want to annoy the border states. But I think it had was like a real symbolic effect to help pave the way for the 13th Amendment that was passed later.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said in the quote, all slaves in the rebellious states. The rebellious states weren't going to listen to the rules of the Union. So obviously, I think I'm more on that side that it definitely had more of a symbolic impact. But for the president of the United States to come out and issue this document, that's a pretty significant blow against slavery. That's saying we, the United States, are actively against this. This is what we want our future to look like. We want a future with no slavery. It's not like it couldn't have had because like I said, the southern states weren't gonna listen to the union because they weren't part of the union. So definitely, I think it had more of a symbolic impact than say like a direct impact.
I feel like a lot of people might not have even believed it at first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know,
Yeah, because it's like oh like what is this? Like what are you trying to say? And that's
Yeah,
it.
I think it's kind of. Oh, sorry.
Or David, you can go. I don't think
Yeah.
Sister Mary Ann gave me the timeout yet.
No, I was like saying, it's like, yeah, it's going to be kind of. I think it would, building on what Jack said, I think it would be kind of an interesting thing to find out if you lived in Maryland, Missouri, Delaware, Kentucky, that all of a sudden it's not, you're part of the union, but it's like, it, and the new law is, um, no slavery in the rebellious state. So it's like, oh well, either I stay here and I can keep my slaves, but then I'm gonna lose them probably in maybe 2 years or so, and it's kind of leaves them in a weird position too.
Mm-hmm. Thinking it really leaves sort of like open to a number of different possibilities. You know, like these bordering states have there's so many different things that can happen, and as a result, you know, they can if they can choose a side and either suffer victory or defeat, or they can stay in the middle, which can also be victory or defeat. So it opens a can of worms that you know anything could happen, you know, based on your decision. So you need to tread lightly.
Yeah, especially since Maryland is home to the part of the capital.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
exactly, yeah, exactly.
if you messed with them a little too much, it'd be like, hey, we're gonna leave.